tropical storm watches have been issued in the Baja California Peninsula ahead of Tropical Storm Lorena, a newly named tropical storm formed this morning and is intensifying as it pushes off towards the northwest, towards the Baja California Peninsula. A newly formed tropical storm right now, still producing heavy rainfall along the coastline of Mexico given its proximity. It's got winds of 50 miles per hour and a pressure of 1,002 millibars, which is 85 kilometers per hour and 29.59 inches respectively. Moving northwest at 24 kilometers per hour, moving off towards the northwest here, and we are code blue on Kiko, 48 points right now for the storm. A fairly broad storm compared to its fellow cousin off towards the southwest. We'll see on the title imagery here in a few minutes. Right now the storm is located at 19.4 degrees north, 109.0 degrees west, 248 miles away from Cabo San Lucas, 395 from Puerto Cortez, 460 from Santo Domingo, and 573 from Macomb, and 654 from San Cristobal. All of those along the coastline of Mexico. In particular, Malcolm looks to be the forecasted landfall area as it stands right now for Tropical Storm Lorena, as it is forecast to make a 50 mile per hour tropical storm landfall in those regions in about 3 to 4 days from now. So here's where it's waiting for it to look like right now. It's very small, given that it only has just become a tropical storm in the past 6 to 12 hours. As I do said, tropical storm watches were just issued for Cabo San Lucas northward to Cabo San Lazaro on the western coast of the Baja California Peninsula. Newly issued tropical storm watches, and I imagine that throughout tonight and into tomorrow morning we'll see those incident off towards the north, and later on those will of course become tropical storm warnings for some locations as the storm nears the coast. So the main threat with Lorena as it stands right now is going to be flash flooding primarily. Given that the storm has a pretty large influence as far as that goes, the rainfall threat is going to extend far out from the center. Indeed, some locations in Cabo San Lucas in particular have already experienced heavy rainfall, primarily due to Lorena's outer bands, and given that Lorena is also going to be a slow-moving storm, those rainfall threats might prolong themselves for a few days, or maybe even for the next week or so in many areas. With Lorena also forecast to probably reach hurricane status, believe it or not. Some strong wind gusts may accompany the storm as it pushes off inland as well, some of which could gust up to hurricane strength as the storm makes landfall. So, what does the forecast look like? This is what the forecast is looking like right now for Lorena, pushing off towards the northwest. Fairly consistent movement for the next 12 to 24 hours, but slowing down as it makes its curve back into the coast of the Baja California Peninsula. Making landfall probably as a mid to high tropical storm here, weakening as it pushes inland. It's not going to be a tropical storm this far inland into Mexico, but dying off as we go off into the weekend into early next week. And maybe some rainfall threat for Texas and Arizona too. We'll have to wait and see on that though. So there you can see that yellow outline there on the coast of the Baja California Peninsula there. That is our newly issued tropical storm watch. You can see the forecast cone does show the storm peaking with winds of 85 miles per hour in about 36 hours from now. Does it get a little bit higher than that? Models certainly agree. We'll have to wait and see though. Curving inland, very slow moving has to be said, might prolong that heavy rainfall threat, and weakening of course as it heads inland into Mexico. So the satellite estimates are very interesting to say the least. AMSU of course once again, it seems for every single one of my updates recently, went behind the curve, SATCON and pretty much right on the money at ADT, maybe a little bit higher than what we're seeing right now. So certainly an intensifying tropical storm as it pushes off towards the northwest here, and you can see on that graphic there, look at how small Hurricane Kiko towards its southwest looks compared to Lorena, very small. So here is the two tropical storms on the latest GFS model run. You can see Kiko and how small it is compared to Lorena. Lorena moving off towards the northeast there, dying off very quickly as it moves inland here. Very quick anticipation as far as that goes. Those Mexican mountains you can see there on the imagery here are very high. Remains to be seen on how strong it gets though. GFS does suggest that it might get up towards Category 2 status, maybe even a little bit. Maybe even get up towards 90 miles per hour. We'll have to wait and see on that. 85 to 90 miles per hour is the amount of consensus as it stands right now regarding the peak intensity of Lorena. Regarding the rainfall threat, you can see those darker colors, those reds, are really going to be where we're going to be seeing the heavy rainfall threat. There you can see it peaking, weakening as it heads inland. Maybe some wind shear induced. We'll have to wait and see though. So that might move the heavy rainfall threat to the north of the circulation center. I'll have to wait and see on that, but the remnants will push into Texas and Arizona and New Mexico, promoting maybe a heavy rainfall threat there in much needed areas. Those areas haven't received rainfall in the interior U.S. here in a few days. You can see well, after that makes its way up into Oklahoma, and eventually becomes a frontal system that pushes off through the U.S. here. You can see the heavy rainfall totals not going to be too much of a concern here. We've seen way higher rainfall threats in this area, but Lorena is certainly going to be a substantial one here. Maybe 13 inches or so in that red area there. This is just one model run here. But maybe what we're going to be seeing, maybe isolated 6 inches, 7 inches, maybe widespread across the board here regarding Lorena, and into Texas and New Mexico and Oklahoma portions of the U.S. regarding the remnants of the storm, maybe even 2, 3, 4 inches, maybe isolated amounts regarding that frontal system as well. Not really going to be seeing too much in terms of the rainfall threats. Going to be a pretty substantial one though, but nothing to write home about regarding Lorena. So what are the sea surface temperatures looking like right now? You're going to have to add a few degrees onto these. That's what we're going to be seeing. So certainly waters across the board here are favorable enough to sustain development as far as the storm goes for the time being. But it's a very fine line as it makes that recurve into the coastline here on those water temperatures. Just how cold do they get and how far west does the storm make that eastward curve back into the Baja California Peninsula? That could mean night and day difference between how strong the storm gets and how weak it is when it makes landfall. There's still some question marks to be answered regarding that landfall intensity. Does it come in maybe even a little bit weaker than what we're forecasting right now? Maybe 45, 40 miles per hour. If we cut the storm, we'll have to wait and see on that. And here you can see those water temperatures in a much better graphic here. You can see just how sharp that cutoff is there as it makes that recurve. Maybe does it come back into those warm waters a little bit and maybe strengthen maybe 5-10 miles per hour as it comes to the land? That's a really far stretch, I think, though, given the wind shear values that we're going to be seeing. But certainly it's favorable enough for some intensification. We're going to be seeing a hurricane probably out of this, I bet. But question on how strong it gets, we'll have to wait and see. Surface flux not really saying too much as per usual. Although it looks like that we've got a 26 knot there. I believe that's 26 knots gust in Cabo San Lucas on the outer bands of the storm. So certainly a very large influence being felt here across the broader region of where Lorena is right now, even on the mainland coast of Mexico off towards the east. Strong winds are all going to be a threat as these outer bands push through, and they're going to be bringing heavy rainfall and torrential rainfall as well with them. So the models are still a little bit uncertain on exactly where the storm is going to make landfall. You can see the HWRF, that blue line there, a far western solution. But you can see those GFS and those HAFS A and B model runs are further off towards the east. So still some wiggle room to be said on where the storm actually makes landfall. A farther east solution would bring a much stronger storm in. A much farther west solution would bring a much weaker storm in. And with the eastward track, though, also means probably a higher peak intensity. You can see the HAFS-B model run there, that orange line depicting probably a Category 2 peak. I wouldn't rule that out entirely. The storm will have to go a lot further off towards the east to do that, though. One thing is for sure, though, look at how much that wind shear spikes as it goes and lands here. Up towards 40 to 50 knots, maybe even in excess of that even. But of course, the storm would be over mainland Mexico by then. It will be weakening underneath those landing directions and shear conditions. You can see those water temperatures do drop off a cliff. But if the storm does get into the Gulf of California here, maybe does it re-intensify a little bit. Water temperatures certainly do favor it in those regions. Maybe does it have that land influence that helps the circulation tighten up maybe 5 miles per hour or so? We'll have to wait and see though. Well, there's Kiko. You can see how small it is compared to Lorena. Lorena on the right, Kiko on the left. Kiko is intensifying substantially, and it is probably going to go on to become the next major hurricane of the season. We'll have to wait and see on that. National Hurricane Center upgraded it to a Category 2 a few hours ago. But regarding Lorena, you can see it is a very large tropical storm. Just how much its influence is sent out towards the storm. You can see those outer bands pushing through Cabo San Lucas and the mainland Mexico areas. Very large tropical storm here. Regarding any climatology for this area, It's a very large storm, has to be said, for this time of year for this region. You know, we've seen tropical storms of similar strength and size, maybe even a little bit smaller than that for this time frame too. The infrared imagery indicated maybe a little bit of dry air problems as it goes right now, but you can see the storm is trying to get that centralized core going. It'll get that with time probably, and it will become a hurricane nonetheless, I bet. Hurricane Lorena on the way, and a potential threat for the Cabo San Lucas area and portions off towards the northwest. Cabo San Lucas and the Baja California Peninsula on watch for Tropical Storm Lorena as it pushes off towards the northwest. And I imagine that we'll have further updates on the storm as it pushes off towards the northwest. Cabo San Lucas on watch for Tropical Storm Lorena as it pushes off towards the northwest. Eastern Pacific season going so far so well. When will it end?